All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SUGQA podcast channel. My voice is still not 100%, and so a lot of those words came out a little chewy. And I wish I were doctoring my coffee. Let that be a good excuse, but unfortunately, that's just how it's gonna sound today. I'm already pausing for a sip of coffee here. All right. We have a ton of tech news to jump into, and I won't be able to sustain a 3 hour stream. So, abbreviating some of our normal patter, good morning, happy Monday. I like to hold this show on a Monday so that we can chat out those top tech news stories and kind of dig into stories as they develop over time. We're not just getting outraged about one individual headline on social media. We're trying to dig in just a little bit more. And we like to do that through a kind of question and answer format. We've got a great group of names here in the live chat. Ron just jumped in saying, hi there, everyone. We got Trev, Simon says Hypno, Sulin, so live, so live. Georgie, you got Jimmy Fire Dragon wishing everyone a happy hello today. Bradley Larcher, John Gow, Scoop came in early. I love to see it. Love to see it. And I think we're gonna have a lot of fun today. It's some weird news. This is an interesting week, and again, for some of the tease of the title of this week's podcast, I just thought it was like a fun way to kind of tease some of this news. But really interesting things happening that I think a lot of us are going to appreciate. So I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. Softball season is in full swing. Weather in California is not helping me get over this head cold, where it was like 40 degrees in the morning, then 85 degrees in the afternoon, and I'm trying to work with like softball players that are freezing at the beginning of practice and then ridiculously dehydrated and overheated at the end of practice. The weather swings are driving my sinuses crazy. It's been a lot. So just as I feel like I'm getting over the head cold, I feel like my sinuses are getting impacted because of allergies and changing weather conditions. It's pretty great. Furchinvel saying, hey Juan, what's up, Furch? And Anthony I morning woke up on time, just making my coffee. I love it. I don't know what my wife got, but it's this really nice medium roast and it's really nutty. It's kind of like a really good, like, kind of getting over just everything being a darker roast. After a point, to me, it's now like I feel the dark roast trend or meta in coffee is just make it all taste burnt so that it all tastes exactly the same. My wife found this, like, it's a lighter medium roast Sumatra, and the first note that you get is almost something kind of almondy, which is just really nice. So it's pretty great. John Gow, still below zero on the East Coast. Hope everybody out there is keeping their heads down, staying safe. A friend of mine, she's a school teacher. Her daughter has been home. I know she's going a bit stir crazy. Both the kid and the teacher, my friend. It's wild out there, and the conditions are going to swing from day to day. It does make me concerned. Like, I'm not bragging when I say, oh, it was 85 degrees in Southern California. It makes me crazy nervous because about a year ago, and hot, dry conditions in the middle of January, we had wildfires that led to a whole string of evacuations in communities around us. So that's not a brag. That's a, oh damn, we got to look out for each other. We got to keep an eye out on what's going on. The subtler impact of that was seeing like a bunch of red-faced softball players and be like, oh, you need to stop and get some water. This is now becoming a health issue. So, uh, again, hope everybody had a lovely weekend. We're gonna jump into some housekeeping. This has been like a coming back from CES, then getting sick, then having some family issues, then getting sick again. It's just been this weird push and pull where like a day I might not get anything done, and then like five things finish all at the same time. So let me go ahead and click in right now. All the hot activity is on my Patreon. So that's patreon.com/somegadgetguy. Let me get this over here. A biggie that we got out, Vivo X300 Pro camera conclusion, where's the upgrade? And I'm making a note out of this one. I've been really conservative in how I've been putting together the camera deep dives. That used to be like this driving thing on my channel where every phone would come out and I would work the days and days of work to try and put together this really long form, super granular examination of the camera performance. And those videos just started tanking on YouTube. It was one of the main things that I left Pocket Now. You know, when I stepped away from Pocket Now, one of the major deciding factors to me was listening to one of my editors say, well, yeah, we totally want to be known for consistent reviewing, but maybe we only do the camera reviews on Samsung and Apple, which was like a major reason why they brought me on to replace Michael Fisher. Like that was that was a, a painful proposition to get. So now on my personal channel, that's become one of the sort of Patreon perks is YouTube kills those videos. They just die. And I can watch like it's getting traffic building, and then it just shuts off. And he's like, I genuinely don't believe that is actual viewer behavior. I believe that is YouTube shutting off the pipe to a long form video, and it takes way too much work to put that out there to see that kind of video die. But I haven't been keeping up as aggressively with every single phone release. So I actually am planning a few more mid-rangers and going in and seeing like has anything evolved over the last couple of years. But for the Vivo, where is my Vivo? The Vivo X300 Pro, I did have to abbreviate the long form nature of this because it is so similar in hardware to the Vivo X200 Pro. There's only one critical difference that I can point to in terms of hardware, and then the rest of it is software and processing. So it becomes kind of a bit more of a comparison, but for a lot of the analysis that I would have done on this phone, it still kind of holds true that if you watch the Vivo X200 Pro camera deep dive, it's a lot of the same points that I would have been making for the Vivo X300 Pro, so I kind of scaled that back. It's a bit more streamlined, it's a bit more straightforward. Then, just in continuing, last week talked about there were some scary moments in our family, and my wife had to spend some time. She was using her work iPhone and her Pixel 8, and I was glad that she had packed like a backup battery because she ended up being away from home for a couple days. And already that conversation was pretty rough. She's not enjoying the Pixel 8 experience. It's just now getting to 2 years old. So this is not an old phone. I mean, this is like kind of in the cycle that we would expect. And this is for a phone that Google is promising years of software support. So it must last for more than 2 years. And she just showed me that her Pixel 8, not only is the performance stuttery and the battery life miserable with absolutely crazy slow charging, now she's got this real pretty purple line running down the screen. And you'll see, like if you really zoom in on this photo, you can see all these little spider web cracks. That's her screen protector. She is tough on gadgets, but she's got this in a nice chunky bumper case, and she's got a screen protector. She's done everything she can to kind of mitigate all of the abuse and purse damage that might befall a phone in her keep, but the screen is failing now. And so I've been saying this for a while, but I think now she's becoming a bit more motivated. She's been a little bit more interested in we could probably repair this phone. I actually got on the Patreon post some wonderful recommendations. So we might still repair it and then maybe just keep it as a backup phone. But given how good her experiences have been with the OnePlus Watch, because her experiences with the Pixel Watch were pretty miserable. She had a Pixel Watch and a Pixel Watch 2 both fail on her in very short time frames. Her OnePlus Watch has been going strong. And then the major difference between her OnePlus Watch and her Pixel Watch was how much faster the OnePlus Watch would charge, and then she could run that watch twice as long out in the field as her Pixel Watch. So because of that experience, literally because of the smartwatch experience, she's really curious to see like, well, what's this going to be like if I switch my phone over. So she's looking at a OnePlus phone. We're probably gonna just pass over my review unit, OnePlus 13R. We'll probably do a video or at least an editorial just talking about her experiences there. But I think that's about it. I think she's tapped on Google hardware. She's really not interested in doing anything else. And also, it's just been funny because like my mom has been the holdout. So my mom went from a Samsung Galaxy S5 to a OnePlus 6T, and then ran her OnePlus 6T up until the launch of the OnePlus 12. So I think my wife is looking like, I know Juan's mom isn't nearly as hard on her phone as I am, but she ran a OnePlus 6T for 6 years. I can't run a Pixel for 2. Maybe I should try something different. So yeah, it's going to be a fun experiment because I really feel like, and especially now that we're right at 2 years, I doubt Google's going to do anything. And they'll look, like, oh, well, obviously there's user damage or something. And I'm just not really interested in playing that game. We'll see what a repair. Maybe if I can get a refurb screen, I can also pop in a new battery. We'll see. But because of how slow the phone charges and because of how poor the battery life was, she was well over, she was 407 charge cycles in under 2 years. And we know that Google is going to start throttling your phone at around 200 charge cycles. So everyone out there with like Pixel 9s and Pixel 10s really got to take a look at what your charging behavior is, because it doesn't matter if the battery is in good shape. Google is auto throttling just based on charge count. So that's going to be rough for a lot of people. And then rounding out the Patreon, this is early access. It's probably going to publish this week. The 8849 Tank X rugged phone. Can a super bright 1080p projector save the slower processor? Ooh, drama, controversy, drama, controversy. But no, I've got this ridiculous lump of a brick over here on my desk. Been playing with this for a couple weeks now. Folks at 8849 keep sending me these internet-enabled appliances, because this is not a phone in any traditional sense of what we would call a phone. And I kind of love that I'll say in these reviews, this is not a good phone. And people flip out. And I can't help myself. I can't help but kind of pick at that that nuance. It's the best phone ever because it's the phone that I need, and I like this phone the best. And you're like, no, you're not hearing me. I absolutely adore this hardware and I love the experience, but to call this a phone does a disservice to the conversation. It's not a phone. Not if it's got a built-in projector, active cooling, a battery large enough you might not be able to fly with it based on current airline regulations. That's not a phone. It's a real bad phone. Can you mount it to your windshield on a little MagSafe disc? I don't think so, because you can weightlift with it. It broke my foot. Well, actually not this one specifically, but the Tank 3 Pro, which is roughly the same size, broke my foot when I dropped it and it landed on my foot. So that's not a phone. People are asking if maybe I should do graphene. Old Trev, 13, she'll be dining. Oh, let me try that again. I really want to get my pirate voice, and my throat just went. So let's try this one more time. 13, she'll be donning an eye patch and sailing the high seas. Oh, pirate's favorite letter, you'd think it would be R, you matey, but actually they are in love with the sea. It's my daughter's favorite pirate joke. From Ripso404, 6 through 8 were crap generations, though. 9 and 10 are a big improvement. Honestly, I don't know that the 10 is. I feel like we're trading parts and pieces of this experience to make some things better while some things are actively getting worse. Unfortunately, right now I have a 9 and a 10. And I'm using the 9 mostly to keep up with beta updates, the Android beta software. I think I like the 9 better than the 10. I know the 10 runs a little cooler. It's got a slightly more power efficient radio, but the second I try to push the 10 to do anything else, or if I want to play a game or I want to just, have some fun with it, I think the 9 handles that stuff better, even if it gets warmer. So we keep, I don't know. I'm upset because we kind of keep moving the goalposts on. I write in this editorial. I'm writing about my wife's phone, and I'm worried that maybe, as I was a part of Team Pixel, and I was really hoping to see a competitive alternative. I wanted to see Google really step up and live up to their claims that they're making their own chip, they're pulling away from Qualcomm, they're going to be a competitive force in this market, they're going to offer something different, and instead, by the time we got through the Pixel 7 Pro, it felt like Google just pivoted and said, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we put out. We can charge the same as Apple and then put our phones on crazy sales that completely devalue premium Android phones, and we'll just say we're as good. It's marketing. That's what it really starts to feel like. And when you start to pivot and you see that change from the Pixel 9 to the Pixel 10, just as they're getting away from Samsung's Foundry and they have the opportunity to use other parts and pieces, they could be collaborating more with MediaTek. They could be looking at other strategic partnerships. The GPU is such a miserable part in that phone. And they could have. They could have gone NVIDIA. They could have gone AMD. They could have done something different and lived up to their claims about being a different competitive force in smartphones. But instead, they just kind of shrugged it off and like, this is good enough, and people will still, pay for this phone or, just buy it on a sale. And I don't feel like that's the kind of shrug apathy we should have with a phone that's now clocking in like $1,200. So anyway, that's just me. Bionic Scoop. Thank you, Juan. I don't know. Are you commenting on another creator that we're mutually friends with who might also make a bunch of videos about tank phones and tank tablets? I don't know. Is that what we're saying? But a lot of folks here commenting like maybe we should throw on Graphene or some other ROM lineage. Someone was asking me about EOS on the Patreon the other day. And if we do decide to refurb, like try and fix this screen and swap out that battery, maybe it could be a fun project just to see. I might, as my Pixel 10 ages, I might flip that over to being my beta testing phone. And then I'll take my Pixel 9 and see what other ROMs we can play with on there too. It's just so much time to spend on a topic that consistently has radically underperformed on my channel. So I always appreciate enthusiasts care about building up some chatter on Graphene and Lineage and EOS and all these things, but like, man, you got to know, I struggle to move any numbers on those, and you can't sit back and say, well, it's your livelihood, so shouldn't you just want to do it for the community and for funsies? And you're like, unfortunately, I also have to make a mortgage, so I wish it weren't that, but it sure would help if I do a video on Graphene and it gets more than my sharing it on Blue Sky. Okay, that's fun. So yes, Tank X in preview, and then I got one other video out public. And this is another one, because like I've ranted about this on the Patreon, and I've even mentioned stuff like this here on the podcast, but I had to put this video together. The super speed lie. We can just admit that USB solid state drive speeds are basically lies now, right? External solid state drives aren't external SS. Wow, take 3. External SSD speeds aren't real, are they? Sure, the drives can support these crazy fast connections, but will folks really be able to use them? And I'm changing up some of my review policy for accessories moving forward. I am still getting pitched on, portable SSDs that have these incredible fast speeds on them, and then when I plug them into a newer computer with USB 4, man, I can't get anywhere near the speeds that they were advertising. So is it a lie? Or is it just the reality of where consumers are right now, that proper support for that kind of hardware just doesn't exist anymore? And it's funny because we're sort of in these in-between transitional generations of standards. This is a standard that no one supports. So what do we call that? What do we call a standard that no one uses or supports? It's kind of weird, right? It's a weird place to be. So do I review it based on the standard, big bunny air quotes, the standard, or do I review it how most people might use it? And you know, on my channel, I am not a fan of being lazy and apathetic and holding up a $1,400 phone and saying, but most people are just super basic with their phones, and then not actually testing that device, right? I'm not an influencer with millions of subscribers. I'm not a taste regurgitator. I'm not just regurgitating to an audience what their bias already is. I'm actually trying to show, like, hey, if you pick up this phone and you drive it super hard, this is what you should be able to expect. So if I pick up a solid state drive and then say, but most people won't be able to use this feature, am I falling for the same lazy influencer rhetoric? I don't know. I'm stuck. But I put together a video, and you can watch me more articulately express why that's such a big problem. And and again, I feel it's becoming a consumer marketing, truth in advertising kind of situation. From Mr. Maug, OnePlus pirates unite! Yarg. This is be my R phone. Kenox asking about lineage. From Ripso, what I can never understand is why Google can never marry hardware and software like Apple, even on their own devices. Like Android on a Galaxy Fold is much better than Android on a Pixel Fold. And I think it is useful. I think it is always useful to take a step back from any other broader conversation, if it's a massive $1 trillion corporation, or if it's a government, or if it's like a federated union of services and platforms. We always want to take that step back and say, it's not that Google can't do it, right? Google is not Mr. Google and there's one guy in a top hat who makes all these decisions for the entire organization all day, every day. Google is like a government, and governments are amorphous blobs of varying degrees of power, authority, and funding. And the people in Google have decided that it is not worth investing in the funding to take these parts and pieces and optimize the software experience and bring new services to the table. If their hardware department can sell more. Oh man, someone in my neighborhood just right across the parking lot just started using some kind of grinding tool. That's going to pop up on the podcast. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to deal with that. But they've decided, sort of trickling what makes Android unique and the new software features that are coming to the Pixel, that's their hook. And as long as they market aggressively, they'll make more money than if they really work to drive the innovation, radically improve the hardware. All of those things are hard work and they cost a lot, and you still need to advertise why they're different or why they're better. So if really you can just cut out all of the advancement, iteration, improvement, all of the R&D, and you just go straight to the marketing, you'll probably make almost as much money. It's all marketing. That's why a Galaxy can be the same over 6 generations of phone. It's why iPhone design and features have kind of stagnated. It's why Google isn't really pushing the envelope or moving the needle on anything too dramatically. Because if you just pour $1 billion into marketing every year, you'll sell better than companies that don't try to approach consumers in that same traditional marketing kind of way. So that's why I've been so pissy with Google of late, because they started with really big claims. Going from the Pixel 4 to the Pixel 5, seeing that transition year, and then bam, we're coming out with Tensor, we've got our own chip, we're trying to do something AI-driven, on-device, machine learning. We can't get what we need from Qualcomm, so we're gonna move ahead with our own stuff. And then Qualcomm caught up, delivered all the things that Google was saying they needed and started giving it to competitors. And Google pivoted and said, oh, well, no, now we're a cloud AI business. So it doesn't matter what's in your phone. You spend $1,400 on a phone that's outperformed by a 2-year-old, Xiaomi. Well, I mean, that's fine because we're post local processing. You need data centers. You need cloud AI, and I don't vibe with that business model. Brian Glaze, yeah, you got to make sales numbers look good to the board and the investors. And I bet you consumers don't understand the tech enough to push back on the marketing. So as long as you market it and say, well, this is the Google phone, it's like the iPhone of Google's or something like that, consumers will go, oh yeah, I guess it's gooder. And as long as you can permeate that message, you can, put that out over like NBA games and stuff like that, you'll move the needle more than if you really improve the product. Mr. Maug, I think you left out a word, but I'm still going to read your comment. The Pixel 10 flopped? The Pixel 10, when the iPhone 17 actually seemed like a better value, even the Pro models. So I still have my ire with Apple because they want you to buy Airs, right? The executives have actually been caught talking about how they can remove features and walk back expensive parts and still get you to pay more. But when you compare an iPhone 17 to a Pixel 10 non-Pro, the iPhone 17 does look like a better value. It does look like a better buy. I can't handle iOS. I do not like it, Sam I Am. I do not like Cupertino. I can't make that rhyme. All right. From Ultrev, a new guy I onboarded on Friday had a Pixel 10, and I legit thought it was an iPhone from the front until I noticed the pinhole cut out, not the island. And again, I mean, like, guys like me and TK got a lot of snippy sort of responses because he picked up the Pixel 9 and went, I have an iPhone for work and I have a Pixel 9 and I can't distinguish them from feel unless I'm touching the cameras. If I'm picking up the phones just normally, they feel exactly the same. And I put this blame on Google sort of leaning into and adopting the more Chinese flavor of let's just copy the iPhone. So now you've completely devalued anything in Android that might set apart what makes for a good smartphone experience. And now you're just encouraging people. I mean, if you don't want an iPhone, that's okay because all of these Google devices are now so iPhone adjacent. And if you do want an iPhone but you want to run Android, you're satisfied. But I think really that just encourages, especially in more carrier-driven markets. Oh, someone is ringing my doorbell. I don't know what's going on there. I might need to push pause on that. There's a dude at my door. I'm going to take a quick peek on my camera and see if I need to run out. This is excellent podcasting. I needed to transition anyway. We spent way too long on... Nope, I don't know why they rang. Not there anymore. All right, so I guess problem averted. So anyway, that was housekeeping. Hooray! It only took a half hour. Let me get this out of the way. And get this out of the way. Oh, sorry, I missed some great comments in here, but I'm gonna have to move on. So, quick reset as I get back into the vibe of hosting a podcast. I'm gonna take a quick sip of coffee, and when we come back, we're gonna jump into some of the news pieces that we've got today. Everything that we're gonna be talking about this week, all of the housekeeping, all of the show notes, everything will be available on this week's blog post on somegadgetguy.com, and of course there will be the audio replay versions. There's the nicer version on the Patreon. It's cleaned up, it's trimmed, it's a little more streamlined, and then there's the public version of the podcast, which has a few like little ad breaks and interruptions and stuff like that. But everything will be on somegadgetguy.com. All right, 1 second here. Okay, so I want to start off. We've got two pieces, and funnily enough, both came from CNBC, and I should try to pull it up. Where did I put? Man, I apologize. This is like the least organized I've been, excuse me, for a podcast for a while. I'm trying to do a better job of acknowledging when people like share and contribute stories to this week's lineup. So one Mr. John Gao, I think John submitted this one, coming by way of CNBC. In the whole grand scheme of social media, we've got some big concerns, and especially as media outlets are being bought up by individuals. And yeah, sure, they might be funded by a consortium of investors, but it's often like a cult of personality push from one individual, likely a billionaire, who's trying to manage the flow of information. And there's a distinct value in having a social media platform with millions of users that you can craft a narrative on. It is interesting to see some of the numbers in play. So this is written up by Zach Valise. I think it's Zach Valise. Over on CNBC, TikTok users are deleting the app with removals up 150% following U.S. joint venture. The daily average of U.S. users deleting the TikTok app has increased nearly 150% over the past 5 days, compared with the previous 3 months, market intelligence firm Sensor Tower told CNBC. Last Thursday, TikTok said it had formed a joint venture to keep the video sharing app operating in the U.S. under new American leadership. The company named Adam Presser, formerly TikTok's head of operations, as CEO of the joint venture. Some users took to social media to voice their skepticism about the new joint venture after being prompted to agree to an updated privacy policy on Thursday. So the updated privacy policy is digging into a lot of your personal, regional, and behavioral settings and information. And at the same time, we're already getting anecdotal reports from individuals that if content or commentary is critical in one direction, that the algorithm seems to be stepping on channels that have historically done very well in those kinds of conversations. So knowing that this is sort of being operated on by Oracle, this is yet another media entity under Larry Ellison's thumb. And seeing what's been happening at CBS lately in terms of narrative and the direction of the tone of that narrative, and then seeing the anecdotal, again, we this is what's so frustrating is like we can point to situations, like I can point to YouTube and say YouTube is stomping on smaller content creators, medium-sized channels. It's really not a platform for discovery anymore, but YouTube's operations are so much of a black box that we can never, you know, judicially make that claim, right? Like I would not be able to offer that testimony in a court of law. I would have to say, well, it's my feeling that this is happening based on all of the channels that have kind of gone out of business and all the people that have stopped producing content and all the people that have really struggled to manage YouTube's transitions. And the same thing is now happening with TikTok. And there's a lot of smoke there. We can't say it's a fire legally, but we can point to these trends and say, maybe it's not a good idea. When we see the trend and the change in tone and commentary, the obvious bias that's being placed on news agencies, and then see that someone who was at once critical of Trump before this operations change would generate decent traffic on their TikToks. Now they're critical of President Trump after this operations change, and their videos like literally get 0 views. That just seems statistically unlikely. However a social media site might operate, it just seems very unlikely that that's the play. And so I am obviously political, and I'm obviously left-leaning in my political stances, and I don't know how to better present evidence of how changes in policy pushing right-wing continue to harm the consumer experience, the media experience, the entertainment experience. It just seems like we've got an overwhelming amount of information pointing in one direction. That the further we push on the political spectrum in this one direction, and the more that we sort of acknowledge how billionaires buying up media and social media and entertainment also pushes us in that one direction. It's for all of the claims on the right, well, the liberal media, that's not a thing. I mean, that really hasn't played out in any meaningful sense. It just seems that we keep running into this. And I know people love it when I broach politics, but I've been beating this drum for a while. And I know people don't want this message from me. And that's fine. But I'm not going to stop presenting yet another link in a chain, yet another piece of information, yet another data point that continues to support this idea that if we could push the political spectrum, and I mean this, like, I feel like most Democrats are center right, and that's not helping us either. But if we could push and pendulum swing back and navigate some activity leftward in our political spectrum again, we'd be doing a better job of talking about renewable energy. We'd be doing a better job of talking about broadband distribution. We'd be doing a better job of broadband equity, getting you better services for cheaper, not continuous price hikes on things that you've paid for several times over. We'd be doing a better job on media narratives. Everything would be better. Your grocery bill would be lower. Your entertainment costs would be lower. Everyone would be more prosperous. And it's not crazy left-wing socialism. You know what happens is at some point there's a massive catastrophic failure in this market from being pushed to the right so hard, and maybe you end up with something like a Chinese revolution. I don't want that. I don't think Republicans want that. I don't think right-leaning individuals would want to see the system collapse so bad that that's what happens. But with an unsustainable market and an unsustainable business, eventually something like that will happen. There will be a cratering. There's only so much that you can kind of keep this ship afloat and keep everything inflated to the benefit of billionaires before everything collapses. So I went off on a ramble there. That's what we call a legit ramble. I am very confident that people complaining about folks leaving TikTok is going to be a very short-lived situation. Look at what happened with Twitter. Like, I am still conflicted that I'm auto-publishing to Twitter. There's a link to this podcast on Twitter right now. And the only thing that's kind of assuaging my liberal guilt is the fact that I'm not engaging, I'm not actually going to Twitter, I'm not really participating on Twitter. But I haven't been able to completely step away, and it kills me that the few times this website does show up on a web browser of mine is like I'll see all of the techies, people that I like, and friends and individuals that I think make good work are, hey, let's still host our little hangouts and talk on Twitter and do all this stuff and support this platform and give it traffic. And you're not changing anyone's minds. But even I haven't been able to completely cut the cord, and I worry that I've actually had sort of media impersonation in the past anyway. So if I kill my Twitter account, someone else picks it up and then, impersonates me. That's how I got my blue check mark in the first place on Twitter, was people impersonating me because I was on Pocket Now. That's how low this level can be for really hateful engagement on a social media platform. I go to these media platforms and tie up my one main username just so I can say, if someone said that I said something crazy, well, that wasn't me. I actually messed up on Blue Sky. Blue Sky, I still link to my initial user account, and I switched my login so it was validated by my website, and I forgot to change that. So I guess someone could impersonate me on Blue Sky. I didn't do a very good job on that. But, again, I feel we should be very concerned when the dude who runs Oracle now has his thumb on the scale of TikTok, has obviously changed the direction of CBS and all of the Paramount sort of umbrella of media organizations. And they're looking at what is success. What is success for Oracle its hyperinflation of AI is continuing to fund a completely unsustainable business model so that rich people keep getting richer on these investments until they pull their money and everyone else is left holding the bag. And I don't know how better to present it. You can get pissy with me bringing up politics, but you know the people running these platforms, the people in charge of these media entities, the people who have a direct pipeline to this current presidential administration in terms of communication and in influence, because all it takes to stroke this ego is investing in something that this administration cares about. They don't have any problems talking about politics. They're they're happy to talk about politics, and they're happy that a bunch of people on tech YouTube channels are like, oh, ooh, politics. We don't want to get too political. Well, then you're going to keep getting stomped on. So the TikTok thing is particularly egregious because it is a weaponized algorithm of distraction. And I don't know how to present it as anything other than sort of a slot machine mechanic that hits that dopamine center of our brain in the most tactically manipulative way that it can. Exactly in how I'll say, like, you go to Vegas and you sit in front of a slot machine, and we've acknowledged that it's not legal. I'm sure some casinos probably do it, but it's not legal for a slot machine to change its payouts to make the slot machine more addictive to an individual player. It can't change its payout on the fly. But we're sort of fine with games and social media using those mechanics to really mess with your brain to the benefit of a Larry Ellison, to the benefit of an Elon Musk. And where is this great business savvy and acumen? Because our transition into our next story, also published CNBC, and who brought up this next one? Oh, actually, this one I submitted. So kudos to Juan on the private Discord. Elon Musk says Tesla ending Model S and X production, converting Fremont factory line to make Optimus robots. See, he's a genius. He's a boy genius. He is a business smart guy, expert genius dude, bro. Lit up by Laura Kolodny and Ari Levy. It's time to... Tesla CEO Elon Musk said on Wednesday that the automaker is ending production of its Model S and Model X vehicles and will use the factory in Fremont, California to build Optimus humanoid robots. Quote, it's time to basically bring the Model S and X programs to an end with an honorable discharge, Musk said on the company's fourth quarter earnings call. If you're interested in buying a Model S and X, now would be the time to order it. And I can't think of a better admission of failure in the market than Elon Musk taking 2 of the 4 vehicles they manufacture and ending production on them. So you have the Model 3, the Model Y, and this, I guess 5 is a Model S. Is it? Sexy truck. Yeah, sorry. So 2 of the 5. Not quite 50%. I'm like I said, I'm real good, expert math, dude, bro. Your premium, like fancy crown jewel vehicles, the more expensive ones, we're ending production on those. The cachet, right? So we've already admitted that there isn't anymore, that the public perception of Tesla is no longer what a fancy thing, what a premium thing, what a luxury thing. It's not desirable in any way. And this company has completely failed to generate the interest in its other side programs. Like energy storage, solar programs. What's galling is Tesla, a significant chunk of their profit and revenue come from just government programs, and literally in things like buying and selling energy credits, and not in making a product and selling it to a consumer. They're getting wrecked in the competitive landscape of electric vehicles right now. Their earnings are dropping significantly. Elon Musk is still apparently in line for a $1 trillion pay package because he's such a genius, bro. But the company is failing to generate any consistent or sustainable progress, improvement, profit on their strategies right now. There was this big push from them on way over promising and then kicking the can down the road on things like full self-driving and an automated fleet of taxis. And they kept getting more money from the government and they kept getting more investor interest. And for some reason, Elon Musk is popular with the investing crowd because I think for them, it's, we know we can pour money into this. We can way overinflate this company's stock. And then before we know it's going to crater. Oh, and also Elon Musk can always kind of co-subsidize his other businesses. So if SpaceX is having a really good year, well, SpaceX is going to buy a bunch of Cybertrucks. So that's good for Tesla. He can always shell game. Like, it's not fraud, but it looks and smells a lot like fraud, right? Twitter is in the toilet, but SpaceX can buy a bunch of advertising on Twitter. And the money that people are pouring into SpaceX can then go to subsidize Twitter. And that looks like fraud, but when a billionaire does it, well, that's a little different. So overpromising, 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 under-delivering. We talked recently just, now it's a $100 subscription to get the basic cruise control options that most vehicles come with for free. My busted Nissan sedan has adaptive cruise control. I don't pay a $100 a month subscription just for adaptive cruise control on my Nissan Sentra. That is not a valuable, desirable feature for a subscription in a car that's already more expensive than it probably needs to be, just because it's a more boutique manufacturer. So why should we be surprised? The next business model is robots. He's going to end production of 2 of their 5 vehicles and move that to humanoid robots, which have not demonstrated any significant current advantage in the marketplace. I was just at CES. It was so amusing watching robots do wacky dances, right? Oh boy, humanoid robots. And they can take over for things like factory workers. And I'm not trying to slam some of the companies doing some cool work on humanoid robotics, but it's another one of those things where we're rushing it. We need the next thing, right? We need the next fad. And we've also moved beyond the consumer. We're in a post-consumer landscape. The idea of I make a product, I sell it to an individual, and then I get money for that product, I make a profit, and then the company is healthy based on this cycle of business has been completely eroded by billionaires because they just want to dump a whole bunch of money into AI and data centers and infrastructure. And as long as they can move billions of dollars between each other, they don't need the individual consumer who's going to buy that one thing. But I'm standing there at CES listening to people say like, oh, and physical AI is going to be the next big hot new thing. And look at these robots. And this robot can make a sandwich in 10 times more time than it takes a human at Subway who's hungover to make a sandwich. And don't you want to spend lots of money on that to roboticize your fast food restaurants? Oh, and while we do this demo, this robot has been programmed to dance, but he can't dance on this carpet. So we need to move him to carpet he's been trained on because he can't handle the subtle differences in friction because he's not really a smart robot. He's just a robot that's been trained in this one very narrow band way to do something that's entertaining on video. But then when we move him to another room, he immediately flops over. I was standing in a room with a humanoid robot that was supposedly more advanced than what Tesla's working on with their kit. And they took the robot off of this massive contraption crane Because again, you can't just have a robot resting while it's standing. Standing means that the robot is draining power just to keep upright, because a humanoid form isn't really always the most efficient for practical work. But they take them off the stand because it took them a long time to recharge, and then they sort of open, like they turn him on and they let him start navigating the space, and he starts walking towards me, and two other engineers like jump in front of me because it didn't seem like the robot was really factoring in obstacles in its environment like it should have. And if it had bumped into me or fallen on me, it would have hurt me. And this is what we're saying is Tesla can't figure out a way to sell premium luxury vehicles to consumers. And so now, what are they going to do? They're going to kick the can on over-promising and under-delivering on humanoid robots. It's the perfect, you want to pour money into this investment because we know, and they can go out there and tell you, we know it's going to be terrible today, but unless you pay a whole bunch of money and invest a whole bunch of cash into this program, it'll never get better, and then China will win. And we don't want China to win. China won with EVs. But wait a minute, where was the promise that you were going to be competitive and beat China in EVs? Oh, don't worry about that now. We got to do the robots now. And they're going to keep moving that. They're going to keep kicking the can down the road, and it's never going to deliver what Elon Musk is promising it can deliver, but that's okay because investors seem fine with that. I just had to look up some of the numbers. Like, putting this into perspective, Tesla is worth, I'm just kind of going off memory here. Someone please correct me in these comments if my numbers are way off. But Tesla's market cap is over $1.5 trillion. The value of this company is $1.5 trillion. They're going from a fleet of 5 EVs down to 3. The Cybertruck is basically done. I don't understand why not just cancel the Cybertruck? You've got fleets of them just sitting, literally in many areas rusting, because of the stupid design of the Cybertruck. And it's not a practical vehicle. It's not replacing truck sales in any grand degree. It's not invigorating the EV market. But you're going from 5 vehicles down to 3. We don't have robo-taxis. I would say the company that, I'm not qualified to give investment advice, but the company that I feel is doing actual good practical work on the ground is Waymo. Not Tesla. Tesla, for all their promises of full self-driving, can't deliver anything more than the adaptive cruise control and lane guidance that we already have on normal vehicles. I think Powerwall is doing okay in just sort of numbers and penetration and work. I would never buy one because it's got a Tesla logo on it. But in terms of battery backup, I've heard, when I'm trying to look this stuff up, that's doing okay, but their solar roof company is sort of an abject failure, at least from what I understand and how solar panels traditionally work and the costs associated with replacing an entire roof. It really doesn't make any sense to do Tesla's solar, but Tesla's batteries, maybe they might be a good fit for you in your region. $1.5 trillion market cap, $1.5 trillion, somewhere around there. And the company brings in roughly $100 billion a year in revenue. And I'm rounding up. And of that $100 billion a year in revenue, I believe their last year, which was down 40%, I think they made something like $4 billion in profit. I'm gonna repeat that. Do you have a crazy, awesome investment opportunity, successful business if the company says we generated $100 billion in revenue, and wouldn't you know it, only $96 billion of that were expenses? We made $4 billion in profits. Give that CEO a massive pay raise. I mean, like, those are the numbers. He's in the middle of this earnings call saying, like, yeah, our revenue and our profits tanked 40%. And we're going to cancel 2 of our 5 vehicles. We're not canceling the least successful vehicle either. We're canceling 2 vehicles that, um, I don't know, they could be more desirable if there was some better advertising and they improved the trim and Teslas were assembled better. But then at the end of all of this, like, $4 billion in profit off $90 billion in revenue. And now we're going to make robots, which means we need to expend even more in R&D while we'll ostensibly be making less on selling cars. The game is so rigged. If you're a billionaire, the game is working to your advantage. If you're not a billionaire, you're just getting stomped on. From Kenox, I watched Thunderfoot's last video about how Tesla robots were controlled and how limited they are. He's been calling out Elon's BS for years. I mean, again, it's another one of those situations where there's a market confidence in a strategy that enables investors to make a lot of money at the expense of a market. It's the I'll get mine, F everyone else style of investing. And I think ever since the 2008 housing crisis, when people saw, oh, I could have made a lot of money betting against the housing market and betting that there would be a ton of misery in the housing market, we can do this inflation game. And then when the bubble bursts, I'll get mine and F everyone else. And it's not about building up a healthy company. It's not about generating real world profits. It's not that consumer corporation relationship. It's billionaires can move money between them, and then everyone else on the ground floor gets stomped on. And Elon Musk is kind of the poster child for, I'm not going to pay my taxes, but the only reason my businesses can survive is if I can find a way to put a straw directly into a bucket of taxpayer dollars. And it's hypocritical. He is not a genius businessman who can really make a good business. He is a grifter looking to find whatever taxpayer funnel he can to keep his businesses afloat. Oh, from Cheesecake, yeah, it says 1.3 trillion. So maybe it's not 1.5 anymore. Well, actually, no, hold on. Let me see. Stock analysis, Tesla market cap. Oh, I mean, according to stock analysis this morning, Tesla hit a high of 1.62 and is now down 1.59 trillion. The eighth. and this is Tesla down 5 points. So yeah, that's the market correction for Tesla. Tesla's down a whole whopping 5 points in daytime trading today, off of the news that their profits dropped 40% and they're canceling, they're canceling vehicles and they're going to be investing a ton more money into robot R&D. It's great. It's great. Hold on one sec. From Cheesecake, the Tesla Cybertruck looks like a car in a PS2 game. Mr. Maug, I saw a Cybertruck towing a trailer. I hope it didn't break on the highway. When you see like the wheel joints on that, and it just looks like a car wheel joints, and you're like, that's not a truck. I see. This is the kind of thing. Like, I grew up. My grandfather in Las Lunas, New Mexico, Agustin Archuleta. He was a card-carrying cloth coat Republican, and he worked finances in a really small town, and he was just a Gregory Peck of a Hispanic man, and so practical, stand up, quiet. My entire life, like, this man, like, never raised his voice, always spoke at a very, respectful, calm, quiet kind of pitch, and he would just do something. Something's broken, and he'd just do it. I had these old ratty army. I've told this story before. Like after he passed, I had these ratty Doc Martens. I used to like poke like spikes and staples and paper clips, metal into thumbtacks into the air soles. But the leather, I didn't really take good care of it. And he saw my boots one day and he just polished them up. And it wasn't like my mom was always like, "Oh, you've got to take care of your things and you've got to do this." And that wasn't fair to my mom. That's not a good voice for my mom. I got to come up with a better voice for my mom. But parents come down on their kids. You've got to do this. You need to do that. You should take care of this. You're not respectful. Blah 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 blah. I catch myself doing that with my daughter all the time. But my grandfather just picked up my boots, polished them. They looked amazing, and I went out and bought shoe polish for him. And it was like one of the most transformative moments of my young life. Like, oh, that's just a thing you can take care of it, and it'll last longer. And those boots were expensive, and they were getting kind of ratty. Oh, and then like I get a car, and my car's old and busted, and my dad like takes me out, we rebuild part of the engine. Oh, I can just take care of this vehicle, and it's gonna last me a really long time. Okay, it's like those kinds of things. Like, I don't know. I'm rambling again, but it's just, I look at a Cybertruck and it looks like it's designed to fall apart, to fail, to be really expensive. And then I think of my grandfather. My grandfather's tooling around Las Lunas, New Mexico in just an ancient, I want to say it was like an early 80s Isuzu pickup truck. Sky blue, bench seat, lap seat belt, no shoulder strap, 4-speed manual transmission, and I think that truck ran for like 30 years before he I don't think the truck broke down. I think he just sold it to someone else and probably got like $100 for it and like a nice lunch or something. But that truck that's a truck. That's a practical tool that gets things done and isn't like a hot rod V6 or like a big old massive Hemi, huge displacement. I need 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. That was a truck that picked up bags of cement from the local hardware store. That was a truck that moved lumber across this small town. That was a trunk that kids would get thrown in the back of because it's amazing anyone survived the 80s. And that to me, that's a truck. That's what a truck should be. And I look at the Cybertruck and it's like, that is just a posturing statement for someone to say, I spent a lot of money and I don't care about your feelings that I spent a lot of money. Aren't you triggered, lib? And that's all the Cybertruck represents to me now. And again, the consistency of like thin blue line flags on the Cybertrucks that we see out here in Southern California. I don't see any other reason to own that Cybertruck unless you're making this statement and it's from someone who's like, oh, but I don't want to get political, but I'll show them I'll own a Cybertruck. So, it's pretty great. For Mr. Maug, I'm just realizing there are plenty of electric SUVs, but not so much for sedans. I mean, you can look at Hyundai and Kia. Lots of good sort of mid-size sedans in that. Subaru has an electric, so that's kind of fun for us to have something a bit more wagony. I thought Honda. Is Honda working on their EV strategy? I'd have to check that out. Toyota is dead to me because they went full MAGA. That breaks my heart because my family was a hardcore Toyota family for years. But I think for a lot of us, we're looking at Hyundai, Kia, and Subaru for our next vehicle purchases. I know my brother's driving a Subaru. My sister has a Subaru. I'm torn. I really want the Ioniq 5. I love the lines on the Ioniq 5. But we'll have to see like where we end up just kind of in the next couple years. Not the next couple of years. We actually want to pull the trigger on an EV soon. But we'll have to see how that kind of plays out. Let's see. Yeah, Mr. Mag, I really hate this SUV trend. Man, lots of people have feelings on Cybertruck. Yeah, it's pretty dumb. Mr. Maug, I bought a manual WRX almost 3 years ago, brand new. I legit do not see the need to get an SUV. So I'm with you. I like vehicles where my butt is like inches above the ground. In my heart of hearts, my all-time favorite driving experience was Saab, uh, the Saab 900. You would like just these little steering wheel moves, and your butt would just change lanes. It was a torquey, weird vehicle. It was really sort of nose heavy, just the big engine. For a four cylinder, it was like 2.2 liter four. The sort of a truck four cylinder engine in the front of that car, but then the back was kind of lighter than it should have been because the fold down seats would give you almost as much flatbed space as a Ford Ranger. The Saab 900 was just a wild vehicle, and I loved driving my Saab. It's still like nothing has really quite replaced how much fun that car was. But Subaru seems to me built a very similar DNA in that it's a funky vehicle that fits multiple roles and it's practical, but Subis are also really fun to drive. So I'm kind of with you in there. This is what I want to do. Oh yeah, experiment play 420. Look up the Toyota CEO went full red hat MAGA, supporting the Trump administration. Like not just, oh, we're doing this deal and it's beneficial to the United States and Japan. Like put on the merch, and that to me is sending a very clear signal as to sort of how they're conducting business. And like I said, it breaks my heart because my family was all Toyota. Like my mom had a Toyota Camry that I think she ran. I want to say it was almost 20 years. The vehicles are good. I like Toyota craftsmanship, Toyota quality. Was a big fan of Supras. I used to work on a bunch of like little hot rod racer cars when I was a kid. My friends would pick up like an Eagle Talon, and we'd sit there and like muck with the turbo. I got really good at doing like brake jobs just because they wouldn't let me do like anything else on their cars. Just like really disappointing to see Toyota take that direction. Oh, Mr. Mag is saying the Honda EV SUV is basically just a Chevy Blazer. That's a bummer. Oh, Trev, I want a Lucid Air. They're just insanely expensive. I want to drive one. I just want to take one on a test drive. But they look really fun. Sophisticate. Juan knows some real quirk mobiles. Man, I'm telling you, it seems to be like I love sort of voting with my wallet, wearing my heart on my sleeve, and supporting the companies that I know will probably be losers in the end, but had something really unique to offer. Everything that went into a Saab or that era of Volvo was very similar too. It's like unlike anything else on the market. Just real funky, but you get into them and you realize they're doing things differently, but it makes sense. Like when Saab moved the ignition from the steering wheel column to the cup holder, and you're like, well, that's kind of dumb. But then you see their reasoning for it, and they did the medical impact study on what that hardware around the steering column could do in an accident, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. They solved a problem, even down into funky things like the frame of the car was reinforced by the spare tire. So if you got rear-ended, the car hitting you would have to go through the crazy over-engineered frame of the Saab, then go through a spare tire before anyone in the cabin would be hurt by the impact of that accident. Like, oh, that's actually a really cool idea. Like structurally, they accounted for you need a spare tire. Why don't we incorporate this into the vehicle in a way that I don't know. It just good ideas, and then we vote with popularity instead of with practicality, and then we lose the engineering that goes into some of these really, really good ideas. So anyway, let me take a quick drink of coffee here. Um, from Cheesecake. Why would a car company turn to politics? Is it to attract customers from one side? Every company is inherently political and partisan. they're making decisions based on a board of directors and their relationships with political entities, and they're turning to politics because they've always been political. They've always been political. Don't think that this is like a sudden turn. The CEOs of these companies are managing economies that can start to rival small countries. Tim Cook is one of the best political operatives in the world at Apple. Apple operates an economy that rivals a country. He is a politician. That is what his job is. So, the CEO is having to make some sort of political alliance and thinks that, his company will improve by making this kind of a stance. And I, as a consumer, am choosing to vote with my dollar against supporting that kind of political move. I'm voting against his alliance with this administration. So, again, we can sit back as techies on a YouTube channel and say like, oh, but I don't want to talk about politics. Well, everyone else who's in charge of everything that happens to you over the course of your day is happy you don't want to talk about politics. Moving right along. I spent way too much time on that one too. Speaking of politics and AI and stuff like that, let me go ahead and pull this story up here. And oh, come on! Oh, you're loading a video again. I thought I killed this video. Hold on. Just pause. There we go. So this is actually from Reuters, but I caught the link first. It came with an MSN link, but who shared it? Oh, I can't find it. Sorry. Someone shared it, and I apologize for not properly crediting them on the private Discord. From Reuters, I don't know who wrote it up. I don't think Reuters always does bylines, and I really wish they would. NVIDIA's plan to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI has stalled, according to Wall Street Journal reports. The chipmaker in September announced plans to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI in a deal that would have given the ChatGPT maker the cash and access it needs to buy advanced chips that are key to maintaining its dominance in an increasingly competitive landscape. Very recently, headlines that came out today, Jensen Huang has come out and said there was never a commitment to giving them $100 billion. But I want you to see, now I can't legally say this is fraud, right? I am not a member of the SEC investigating NVIDIA's business practices and their investment practices, but NVIDIA is going to give OpenAI $100 billion. And OpenAI is going to use that $100 billion to buy advanced chips that are key to maintaining its dominance in an increasingly competitive landscape. So if I were OpenAI and NVIDIA just gave me $100 billion, you know what I would do? I'd go buy some AMD chips and some Qualcomm chips and some Intel chips. No, of course not. We know very likely the AI hardware most companies are trying to get their hands on is made by NVIDIA. Wow, isn't that funny? And then also, we know, again, well, we don't know, but the internal reporting and the communication on costs and expenditures, we're pretty confident that OpenAI is already roughly $10 to $14 billion in the red just through January. So if that trend of how much money they need to spend to keep operating continues through the year, we're probably looking at close to $200 billion that OpenAI is just going to burn through. That they're not making $400 billion on their expenditures of $200 billion. We know They're probably just in the red, roughly $10 billion. It's great. It's awesome. So let's say NVIDIA gives OpenAI $100 billion. That's not going to cover their costs, let alone all of their promises to buy up. What is it? They were saying they were estimating they were going to try and buy 40% of the server grade RAM needed for these AI data center installations. That's just like a future promise that they want to do that, but the promise of that has already caused speculation to skyrocket on the prices of these components and has already convinced companies like Micron to stop making RAM for consumers because OpenAI is promising to buy up this much RAM, which is basically they're just going to sit on this hardware to prevent their competitors from having access to it as cost effectively. And NVIDIA, if they go through with this at some point, which I bet you at some point NVIDIA still does invest some money in OpenAI so that OpenAI can turn right around and give that money right back to NVIDIA. How is that not some market manipulation? How is that not a fraudulent business deal? And all the while, OpenAI is continuing to hemorrhage. They can't pay for their own operations. And I want to put this number again, we were just making fun of Tesla, 1.5-ish, $1.6 trillion market cap. Every single time we get this headline, OpenAI is in the red deep, they run another round of funding, another an investor round. And they'll get like another $20 billion investor round. And then that immediately goes into the furnace. It's like you're just taking shovelfuls of cash and throwing it right into a blazing fire because that's what their operation costs demand. They're not, oh, we're going to get another $20 billion and it's going to go into this radical R&D and then we're going to come out with a product that's going to make a whole bunch more money. It's we're $20 billion in the hole. We can't pay for our server infrastructure operations costs and we need another round of investing. But every time you run a round of investing, the valuation of the company goes higher. So here's where we're at. I'm at the end of this article here. I'm kind of spoiling the end of this article, but I need you all to hear these numbers. Big tech companies and investors such as SoftBank are racing to forge partnerships with OpenAI, which is spending heavily on data centers, betting closer ties with the startup would give them a competitive edge in the AI race. Amazon is in talks to invest dozens of billions in OpenAI, and the figure could be as high as 50 billion, Reuters reported on Thursday. OpenAI is looking to raise up to 100 billion in funding. So I guess NVIDIA isn't going to be just giving them 100 billion. They're looking to raise up to 100 billion in funding, valuing the company at about $830 billion. The company, after this next round of investment scamming and grifting, is going to be closing in on $1 trillion. The value of this company is $800 billion, and they can't generate any profits. The future success is based on these nebulous claims and promises of things that are going to get better, but we really got to, 10x our current compute performance, and we're decimating the hardware landscape by promising to buy all of these components for data centers that they may or may not be able to fulfill if they can't squeeze another $100 billion in startup money. It's a perpetual grift. And now it's a sunk cost problem. Because if you just pull the plug on OpenAI, they're going to crater. And that's going to pull all of these investments down with them. It's going to pull all of this infrastructure down with them. It's going to completely devalue all of this compute performance that's just locked up in data centers, making stupid chat and video generative models. There is no practical, sustainable business model here. And let's say tomorrow they are magically able to fulfill their commitments to data centers. In another 3 years, that hardware is basically obsoleted. It's going to get swapped out. You've got to raise billions of dollars of funding again to make your data centers more competitive as the technology improves, which is exactly what NVIDIA wants. You know, NVIDIA is working on their future server chips. And in another 3 years, oh, you don't want to be on Blackwell, you got to get this other thing. And it's going to be an even better AI to AI your AI with more AI. And that's what you need in your data centers AI. And it's just going to keep rolling until the bottom literally falls out. And OpenAI is dancing here. This is money they are raising today to hopefully pay off the debt that they're in before they can actually fulfill their future commitments. I don't see how you eventually get ahead of this. It's never going to be everyone just has a $20 a month OpenAI subscription. It's not generating $20 a month of value for anyone. And y'all, the people around you don't want to talk about politics. But that's what's happening when these people have direct communication pipelines to our current presidential administration, get preferential treatment. They can squash legislation that might regulate this industry. And we're racing towards a 2008 style calamity, both in terms of compute performance, literally in real estate, the land that gets tied up in these deals, our infrastructure, our communications network, our energy needs, our natural resources, and how a new data center might utilize water. How is it going to be powered? Is that going to be bad for air quality and pollution? Everything gets wrapped up in this in a way that's way worse than just the housing market collapse. And we know how rich people get when their investments are harmed. Everyone else getting stomped on, oh, well, that's too bad. You just got to be a savvy investor. But oh no, maybe my investments are going to get harmed. Well, now I've got to talk to the president. And if you're worth over $1 billion, you can very easily just go talk to the president. Spent too much time on that one too. Let me take another drink of coffee here. I have not intended to go this long on this podcast. I am just, I don't know. It's like, especially when I'm having sinus issues, I get foggy and I'm even easier to like do that. I mean, yeah. Sorry, some of these are great. Brian Glaze. I don't want to talk about politics. Yes, but politics is ever present in every facet of your life. From Cheesecake7121, how can I join the Discord server? Just because it has proven to be too much for me to manage. I had plans to open it up at some point, and I still am looking at potential or opportunities to do that. But just for my own bandwidth and for what I know I can reasonably accomplish, managing a community, the best place I've found for doing that has been on Patreon. So the private Discord and the Patreon chat are tied at the $2 tier on patreon.com/somegadgetguy. And that doesn't mean you have to pay in perpetuity. It's very rare that I've ever done like a culling of people that stopped subscribing to the Patreon. But that's the perk. At the $2 perk, it's naming the credits and access to the private chats. And at some point, I hope to make that change, but I'll tell you, it's been a big challenge trying to find other methods of monetization and other ways that I can fulfill good community engagement. So I've had to kind of put that paywall up just for my own sanity and my own bandwidth. But patreon.com/somegadgetguy is where you can jump in. And the Patreon is my safe space. It's where I maybe air too much of my dirty laundry. Oh, sorry, old Trev. Yes, the clarification. I think calling it investor round is a little off the mark. It's not investment, it's a funding round. Yes, I misspoke there. It's give this company money for them to put into new stuff that will probably never pay out. They're investing in their infrastructure, but they need the funding to fund their investments. So, however, investors want to part with their money to enrich the pockets of a Sam Altman is whatever we want to call that. Mr. Maug, Amazon is willing to throw 50 billion at a sinking ship, but they still won't make their drivers employees. Oh no, they're independent contractors legally. That's how we do that. From Kenox, dang, you think we will see a government bailout for the AI industry? It's not too big to fail, but there are a lot of big money involved. I think it's gotten to a point where the American economy is based on speculation, is based on investments that cannot pay out, that cannot generate sustainable business and future revenue and future profits the way that these companies have promised they will. So everything is hyperinflated and crazy overvalued. So I think we have reached that point where AI corporations are in a too big to fail situation. I think they're racing towards this because they know they can play this game of chicken. The train is coming and it's going to obliterate everything in its path. And the rich know that they can get out just before the train collides and jumps the tracks. So they'll be taken care of individually. And then the industries are all going to massive deflate. And they're going to turn to the government and say, well, we can't have this. It's going to destroy the American economy. You've got to bail us out. And then taxpayers are going to foot the bill for all of these reckless and risky investments, just like they did in 2008. And everyone's going to all the rich get to play by different rules. All of the middle class and the poors, they're just going to get stomped on. There goes your retirement, there goes your nest egg, there goes your fund money, there goes your house, like however you financed all this stuff. Like that's going to happen again. But we don't want the economy to completely crater, so America will do its best to dig out the corporations, and they're gonna get away with it again. The fact that no bankers went to jail after 2008 means that we just validated that as a business model. It makes money, so you have an obligation to your shareholders to engage in ethical fraud to make sure you make as much money as you can and F everyone else. So, I just want to put this out as a little PSA. This isn't a major news story, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm going to link directly to the Patreon post. Apple has reimposed its subscription billing mandate for creators on Patreon. So while we were in the middle of the Apple Epic lawsuit and the appeals going back and forth, Apple was really pushing to get super greedy. So if you subscribe to any kind of platform or service through an iPhone using an Apple payment solution, Apple is putting a 30% hike on those subscriptions. Excuse me. Just like any other financial interaction, Apple wants a 30% cut. Apple does nothing except make an app available in the App Store. There's nothing about Patreon Apple is helping. And any other subscription is going to work the same way. Patreon has to run their own servers for hosting our content. So I give Patreon a cut because I don't want to have to host my own payment system and servers and do all that operation. I'm happy to give them a cut of the money I make so that they can field all that back end stuff and I can just make content and find a way to monetize my content. Apple only exists as a leech in between me and people who use iPhones and MacBooks. So there was this little interruption when the Epic lawsuit was going down because Epic was really pushing, hey, that's really anti-consumer that you can't pay for something in another way. The Patreon app was prevented from offering alternative methods of payment. And if you did that, that went against the App Store terms of service, and Apple could just nuke your app. And that's happened a number of times. Apple is a huge bully, even though Tim Cook testified before a Senate Judicial Committee that there is no bullying at Apple. They're the biggest bully when it comes to stuff like payments. So now that that's all sorted out and Apple did the stupidest thing they could possibly do, Tim Cook authorized the take a cut of off App Store payments plan. Phil Schiller said, hey, don't do this. It's going to call a lot of attention to us, and it kind of violates the spirit of this situation from the Epic lawsuit. And Tim Cook said, no, F all them pores, give me my cut. Maybe not in so many words. That's not a direct quote. But Epic forced Apple to allow for payments outside the App Store. So you could go in and pay with PayPal instead of using your Apple account. So Apple said, no, we still get a 28% cut of that too. So they would audit the app developers and say, well, if you're getting all these payments off of the App Store, you still have to give us a 28% cut. And the judge presiding over the Epic case said, no, that's completely against what this ruling was about, and hammered Apple on changing up App Store policy immediately instead of giving them runway to make changes in the App Store. They just like pulled the plug on that immediately. So now that all of the dust is settled from that, they're just going back to reimpose their 30% cut of subscriptions. I think they probably have the data to say, even though all of these apps have opened up alternative payments, most people are just coasting on paying for their subscriptions through their App Store account. So you've got a choice to make. I've made this choice on my Patreon account. I could eat the 30% price hike, or if you pay for my Patreon through the iPhone app, you're going to see a 30% jump. I feel there are reasonable ways for you to pay for subscriptions by going through a web browser so you don't have to get that 30% price hike. But Apple, again, they love to do this in a way where it makes the subscription look greedy. The price on this subscription just jumped 30%. Well, that's not good. But it's Apple. Apple is putting that price hike on the subscription, and the platforms, the services, they're tired of eating Apple's greed. I think Apple is hoping most people will just be like, well, they don't want to piss off their subscribers, so they'll just eat the 30%. Their subscribers won't pay any different, and they'll just make less money, and Apple will make more money. But I'm not inclined to give Apple that consideration. And I seriously doubt many people in my circles of Patreon and supported policy are using iPhone App Store payment services to handle their subscriptions. But we need to keep an eye on this because something tells me Google will probably eventually follow suit. There's a way for us to make money. There's a subscription. It's technically going through the Google Play Store. We should get a cut. And everything that we can do to push forward, we need to tell our family and friends, like, look at your subscriptions. You might be paying 30% more for something, and all you would have to do is log into your account on a browser and put in a PayPal or a credit card or something there. And yeah, that sucks, but you do it once, and your $14 a month subscription goes down to like an $11 a month subscription. I mean, at the end of the year, yeah, that's not a huge chunk of change, but, you know, you might be able to grab yourself a cheeseburger and fries. Like, is that worth it to you? Like, just the coasting on Apple charging you more for the same service, wouldn't you rather treat yourself to like a burger and fries? Like, that's you would get more. And again, this is an Apple problem because it's going to be framed in a way where Apple tries to make it look like services are just getting greedy. Aren't you so tired of all your subscriptions getting more expensive? There's another price hike at Netflix and another price hike for Amazon Prime. And now these Patreon creators think they deserve more of your money. We're not getting more. Oh, no, 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 no. Apple is sitting on us and taking more, but not giving us more. So it's pretty great. We've got a couple other stories here that are kind of a little more fun. I want to highlight this one with a little bit of crank, but I am happy to see that there's development, that there's progress, and I think this is going to be better for consumer electronics. We've recently chatted about the Android desktop transition. So Chrome OS changing up the underlying architecture, relying on more of an Android base for that experience. We've seen little glimmers of that change in Pixel software. You can plug your Pixel phone into another display, like a Next Dock, plug it in. You'll see a better representation of the desktop mode. The new flavor of Samsung DeX is built on that framework. They're not having to roll all of their own desktop mode anymore. It's a little less good than classic DeX, but it's still, I think, progress for more companies to be able to take advantage of that. And I recently just showed the Next phone prototype where you could plug your phone into a display, the Android desktop mode pops up, you can launch a Debian Linux in Lindroid, in a Lindroid container, or you could dual boot. You can reboot the phone and run Windows 11. All on one device. Android desktop, Debian, Windows 11. It's 3.5 operating systems in one. The folks at 9 to 5 Google commenting on the recent changes to Android, taking a look at some of just the little polish and improvements. Android's full desktop interface leaks, new status bar, Chrome extensions, and more. The biggie for me, a lot of this looks about the same. I don't feel like we're seeing a significant change in sort of the user interface over the Android desktop mode that we've been seeing on the beta builds of Android. I think was it QPR 3? Is that where we're at now? I can't remember in my brain. But one of the things I think we've been most complaining about is you fire up a phone and you plug it into a larger monitor and you're still dealing with a mobile browser. And now it looks like in this interface, in this UI, Chrome is finally giving us the more desktop style underpinning where you need to install bits in your Chrome browser, if you need to rely on plugins, if you want to fire up extensions. That really helps flesh out the user experience. Chrome OS is already very browser-based. Your browser is kind of a little mini operating system unto itself. I like Firefox. I might flirt around with Zen. Zen browser looks a lot of fun. I might give that a spin. But Chrome is kind of its own operating system. So now if we can take an Android device and install all of our extensions and really utilize it more like a Chromebook, I think that would be a benefit for everyone. There's no reason why an Android phone or an Android tablet couldn't share that full-fledged desktop-grade browser experience. So that to me is really the exciting push here. It's not how does it look? Does it look like Chrome OS? All of that stuff I think is the trappings of the aesthetic or the skin or the polish. Wherever we end up there, that's fine. What I think we really want to care about, what we want to see is the underlying functionality match. I don't want to put down a Chromebook, pick up an Android Chrome OS device, and then see that it's really just a mobile device without all of the things that the Chromebook used to be able to support. I really hate that we kind of lose the features and the performance and the more advanced stuff, but it looks just the same as what we had before, or it looks prettier than what we had before. That to me is what's exciting about this push. What I'm concerned about, and this is a very nerdy concern, what I'm concerned about, I'm starting to get the feeling, and someone please argue with me in this chat if you think I might be a little too doom and gloom here. I'm worried that Google is testing the more advanced flavor of an Android-based Chrome OS on the current devices that we have, Android tablets, Android phones, but that when they're ready to make the push and Chromebooks get switched to an Android core, all of this development for phones and tablets is going to cease because Google and Google's hardware partners still want you to buy an Android phone that just does the phone things. And then you should have, like, it's fun to have an Android tablet that does some tablet-y things and maybe shares some of the desktop operating system experience, but it's still a mobile device. It still just gets the mobile browser. And then there's going to be a special partition, a special category for the full-fledged Android Chrome OS experience where you get the desktop grade browser with all the extension support and all of the software support. You can fire up Linux and do all this other crazy stuff when really that should be possible on the tablet and the phone. That's my concern. I'm trying to not get my hopes up that Chrome OS switching to an Android core, I don't think is gonna mean our Android phones get more capable. I think it's just they're doing the development. It's a part of Android. We're seeing that code. You can kind of get to it on the beta builds of Android. And then they're still going to draw these stupid, heavy dividing lines where phone does phone things and tablet does tablet things and laptop does laptop things. And if you want to do all the things, you need to own 3 computers when really the phone could have accomplished all of it. The phone just needs a different monitor or a keyboard case or something to enable the functionality. It should all still be in the code. That's my big fear. I think they're going to try and maintain segmentation, even though we see it now. Like, there's no reason why a Pixel phone can't drive a full-fledged Chrome OS experience. The chip that's in a 2-year-old premium tier phone is probably more powerful than the vast majority of Chromebooks that are sold daily. So there's no compute performance reason why we shouldn't be able to just extend all of these features to all of these devices. There's no reason why your phone today, even without a desktop mode, shouldn't have a full-fledged desktop browser experience. There's no reason why you need to kind of use the mobile experience on a phone and then turn to a wholly different computer to get a proper desktop experience on a laptop or on a desktop. So that's my fear. I want to say, though, I am still ultimately positive on Google consolidating, because I think it's dumb for them to be trying to manage multiple flavors of different operating systems and just really try to work on improving the core experience. This is why Android tablets have fallen so far behind, and they're catching up now, but they always could have been more competitive options with better performance and with more features and capabilities. But for some reason they kept saying, like, well, maybe Chrome OS is what we're going to do for slates. Well, that didn't work immediately in one fiscal quarter, so why don't we try Android? Well, but that didn't outsell the iPad on its first jump. Well, maybe try Chrome OS again. And now they're just merging it all. So hopefully this means Google is actually focusing on iterating and improving in one direction as opposed to like constantly trying different things in different directions. But I also feel like the end goal will be we still need people to buy 4 computer when really they only need 2 computer. And that to me is dumb. But yeah, news on aluminum. Aluminum OS is what we're calling this kind of combination of Chrome and Android. It's cute, it's clever, it's shiny, but it's Android, it's aluminum. But that's my big concern. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way that I do about it, but I'm oft disappointed in what we eventually get when there's all this cool potential, but then the company that's managing it is still like, oh, but we can't disrupt the market. That would be competitive. We can't be competitive. We just need people to do the same thing they've always done and just buy more stuff than they need to. Burr, 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 burr. From Cheesecake, the phone you showed recently is really cool. On the outside, it looks like a really cheap phone, but considering you can fully run Windows on a phone, it's great. So I mean, that's the thing about rugged. You can make rugged look like a crazy cyborg Terminator destroyer of planets, like this Tank X, which my video on the Tank X is on early access on my Patreon. Or you can just put like a rubberized shell on it and make it a really practical. It felt like a nicely built phone. It's a rugged phone. Totally understand why some people might not want a case pre-applied to their phone, but it didn't feel overly chunky and it felt like a straightforward, solid device. The capability is what we care about. And knowing that it's a mid-ranger, an older mid-ranger performance chip, that Snapdragon 778 is still a, a good, solid bit of compute performance in the year 2026. It's still roughly in line with something like an LG V60, which is still overkill performance for most average consumers' daily driver needs. Snapdragon 865, Snapdragon 778, you're fine. The fact that that can run Windows 11 is awesome. It's just remarkable. That level of compute performance is being massively underestimated by techies. Oh, just imagine if it had like a Snapdragon 8 Elite. Yeah, it would be better. I can't tell you, the experience on running it on that mid-ranger chip was startlingly good. And it would just be a full Windows PC in your phone screen if you booted it into Windows. It was pretty awesome. Some sophisticated dead. Ugh, just like Apple's segmentation. I really feel Google is looking at Apple. The iPad, there's no reason why the iPad shouldn't be running Mac OS. Just make it full Mac OS. Well, no, consumers, and they got to do this. And what about the basic stupid people? And we've got all the performance. You can put like an M4 in an iPad, but we can't let them run full Mac OS because then they wouldn't buy a MacBook. Yeah, so buy an iPhone and a MacBook, or an iPhone and an iPad, or ideally buy an iPhone, an iPad, and a MacBook. And that seems to make companies more money. So I'm very concerned. I'm very confident that's the direction that Google's going to go to. From Cheesecake, they would hate that someone might be able to do all of that on just a singular device. And from Kenox, I think they will, kind of like how Microsoft Office Suite is free on screens under 10 inches but has to be paid on anything bigger. I think they'll split it like iOS, iPad OS. And also, it's just been kind of funny, like, man, my daughter's using LibreOffice. I was just playing around. What was the is it AnyOffice? Anywhere Office? I genuinely can't remember. It was built into a NAS that I just reviewed. It was that Ugreen, and it was great. It was real-time collaboration running off of the NAS, and other people could like jump into documents and edit from there, and it wasn't server side. So it wasn't that I had to upload a document to another server. It was that people would like, it was a little slower, but they would log into my document living in this, I think it was AnyOffice. Is that what it's called? I totally just brain locked. Or maybe, I don't remember. Oh, OnlyOffice. Was it OnlyOffice? I think it was OnlyOffice. If I, let me just, yes, Secure Online Office. OnlyOffice, not AnyOffice. Oh, I'm real good at doing the tech. I thought that was awesome. This is like Office software running off of a NAS, and it still was collaborative. If it weren't for just how my wife manages her work contracts and the stuff that she does, where, man, if you have like an Excel spreadsheet and it doesn't perfectly translate all of the formulas in LibreOffice or in another solution, that just destroys her work. If it weren't for that, I don't see any reason why people would need to stick with Microsoft Office like that. It's pretty crazy, like what we're able to do self-hosting. I'm playing with a Jellyfin again, and it's not working great. I still need to find something else. But I'm playing with Jellyfin again because I've been buying tons of comics on Humble Bundle. So like recently, like almost the entire run of every permutation of every era of Vampirella. I'm not a huge Vampirella fan, but it was like $18 for, I was a what? Vampirella started publishing in the 60s, and it was almost the entire catalog. So 70 years of comics. Just like for 18 bucks. And I went, okay, yeah, magical space vampires from the planet of Draculon. And maybe sometimes they're scantily clad. Uh, uh, it's dumb, but it was 18 bucks. So I fire up Jellyfin, and I'm starting to put my Humble Bundle comics collections and ebooks collections in Jellyfin, and it's almost there, where running off of my little home media server, anywhere in the world, I can look up my collection of ebooks. I can transfer the ebook to a phone, a tablet, a desktop. I have complete control over that entire file relationship. It's data enabled, and Jellyfin is managing servers to kind of fulfill communication between devices. But like, I don't have to worry about an edition of a comic getting replaced. Because that's what happened to me with Superman Red Sun. I bought a copy, or excuse me, I paid money to Amazon to get a license to read Superman Red Sun. Then a new edition of Superman Red Sun came out, and my copy was defunct. I didn't get a refund or anything. I didn't get transferred to the new license. I just can't read my copy of Superman Red Sun anymore. And that really pissed me off. I took that personal. So again, when we see what kind of raw capabilities you can just run off of like a busted old laptop plugged into your router, and then suddenly you can do this kind of stuff on it. I could manage document software, have people collaborate on documents and spreadsheets and presentations. I could manage an entire library of ebooks that were legally acquired. I bought them through Humble Bundles. The entire John Scalzi collection, I cannot recommend enough. The dude who wrote Kaiju Preservation Society and Red Shirts, they did a Humble Bundle, and almost every single book he'd ever published, awesome. And I got them for like 20 bucks. I'm not like pirating my content. I'm actively trying to find alternative methods to supporting the creators and the producers that I care about. I wish they would do more like music collections. How awesome would that be if Humble Bundle just started selling like FLAC? Oh, that'd be great. But now I can manage it all myself. And it's not terribly difficult. I just need to see if I'm doing something in there. My problem is I want it to start doing what my Jellyfin server seems to struggle with is even when the ebook has really clearly defined metadata and images. So like it should be able to pull the cover art, excuse me, of that ebook. Jellyfin can still really struggle with that. So when I show my wife Jellyfin, it's not always pulling the metadata for the title. So you're reading the file name of the EPUB, and that's often like in a weird abbreviated title. It's not pulling the metadata properly. So as soon as I can figure out some of those things, then I'm golden. Then I have Plex for ebooks through Jellyfin, and I'm happy. I'm like, even for those stumbling blocks, it's been real nice. Like my wife is paying attention. Like maybe we don't buy books on Kindles anymore. We find other ways to procure EPUBs that are not DRM protected that we can just own on this hard drive, and then we never have to worry about losing access to that book ever again. So it's really fun. But yes, Sophist Decay dead. Thank you for reminding me. It's only Office, not any Office. Oh yeah, in Sophist Decay, I still feel Plex has the better user UX to Jellyfin despite their questionable moves. Absolutely agree. Like I'm still running because I paid for my lifetime subscription to Plex. I'm still running my movie and TV show collection on Plex, but Plex really hasn't there hasn't been a great solution to manage ebooks off of Plex. So that's why I'm firing up Jellyfin again, and I'm running them on the same server. It's silly. I have Plex and Jellyfin running sort of in tandem. But I'm looking at that just for ebooks, and then I'm trying to see like maybe at some point I might manage the transition to all Jellyfin. We'll have to see. It's Plex is really good at picking up metadata in images and banners and thumbnails, and Jellyfin isn't. But I can't do everything on Plex. Oh, from Darcy. I need to play around with this again too. Darcy says, I haven't been super happy with Jellyfin for books. I'm messing with Calibra Web now, but there are others, of course. I need to see, because the last time I fired up Calibra, it was not nice. And that I was just running the desktop software. I haven't messed with any of their web stuff or their organizing stuff. But man, it was a pain to use. It took forever to import a very small collection of ebooks. And then most of them just were empty entries where like I would click on the book and it would open up a book and there'd be a title and a cover art and all this stuff. But in Calibra, it would just be like EPUB. And you're like, that doesn't help me. I have to believe it's gotten better because I haven't really tried Calibra in like years. But I might need to give that a spin too. Just see how that handles coordinating books online with different users. Maybe that's the solution I need. From @cheesecake712, Juan, what's it like emulating PC games on a modern flagship? It has been very good. I think you have to be really careful when you're looking at the bleeding edge of support for Unreal Engine. Like for example, like I always use RoboCop Rogue City as a test now because it is very fragile about how Unreal Engine is supported, and GPU support for that needs to be baked in or the game just crashes. It's like completely non-functional. So obviously something like that isn't gonna work at all on an Android device emulating a full PC. But especially if you like to play indie titles, platformers, less graphics intense games, I love showing off Cuphead. That is a great game to play mobile. The boss battles are perfect for a mobile gaming experience. Like that's exactly the kind of vibe. Maybe you don't want to buy Dead Cells 4 times. Dead Cells runs awesome on Android as a native app or runs awesome as an emulated PC game. And we're starting to see like the Tomb Raider, 2013 Tomb Raider is going to get a proper Android version. Feral Interactive is going to do a proper version of Tomb Raider. I love Feral Interactive. I will buy that just because I want to support developers who do good work on Android. But Tomb Raider 2013 already plays great, awesome on a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. You can already do it now. If you have Tomb Raider, or if you have Tomb Raider in an executable, like you got it from Good Old Games, or if you have it on your Steam account, you can play it now on a phone and it runs really well. On a Snapdragon, it's running like 70 frames per second. Phone's gonna get a little hot. It's gonna chew through your battery, but it runs great. On a MediaTek, the last one that I tested seriously was a Dimensity 9400, and it could spike to higher frame rates than the Snapdragon, but there were much more noticeable dips in performance below 60 frames per second. I think. I might have my numbers off a little there. But yeah, that experience has been phenomenal. Unfortunately, right now, it's a lot of trial and error because you also can't count that every single phone running the same chip has the same software on the phone that can enable or prevents different kinds of gaming emulation experiences. You can't say like, oh, well, I tried it on the Samsung and it worked great, so now every phone with that same chip is going to work great. There's still a little chewiness as you look between different generations of chips, different generations of phones, and different manufacturers' solutions for enabling features built into the chip. But I would highly recommend playing with it. If you've got a crazy Steam library full of games that you've never even started, firing up one on a phone, seeing if it plays, seeing how well it plays. The fact that I can load up Crysis Remastered and it's playing at like 40 frames a second. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where we were still making jokes, but can it run Crysis? And now your phone's doing Crysis at like 7 watts. 7 watts of power. Emulating a PC environment for Crysis to run, and it's doing that at an incredible power envelope. Just absolutely insane. So, speaking of gaming, that's where I want to sort of wrap up our podcast this week, is because this is going to be the year of Linux gaming, right? Every year, don't we say how this is the year for Linux? This is the year where Linux is going to take over. This is the year where Linux is gonna do stuff. So when I say this, I genuinely mean this is going to be another beautiful uptick in Linux adoption and support for Linux gaming experiences. And I think there's enough enthusiast ire over the current landscape that people are trying. The idea of experimenting with Linux for gaming is becoming a more attainable, or I should say it's a more fun experiment than it used to be. Like, you'd fire up Linux, you try and do some stuff, you'd like look at Wine and like, okay, this kind of works. I see. Like, if I jump through a bunch of hoops and I knew I only wanted to play these kinds of games, that would totally work. And then I put a Steam Deck in someone's hands, and that experience is phenomenal. And then I put Steam OS on one of my little Geekom mini PCs, and that experience has been terrific. So we've got a pair of stories here. One of these I think is really cool, and the other one I think is really funny, and we should be pissy about it. But both ultimately become good things for Linux gamers. The first of which is, I was just mentioning, good old games, GOG. Windows 11 haters get excited as GOG says, quote, Linux is the next major frontier, end quote, for Galaxy Client. It's written up by Darren Allen over at tweaktown.com. So someone on Twitter found a job posting for Good Old Game Company, just published a job listing for a senior software engineer in C++ to, quote, build and maintain GOG Galaxy on Linux. So here is where I get very excited. We have all of these other like front ends and game libraries and management software for things like the Steam Deck, so that I can also interact with my GOG library and my Epic Games library. It would be so nice if I could just fire up GOG Galaxy on my Steam Deck and go to all of the games that I've got on GOG and just load them on the Steam Deck and just play them on the Steam Deck. If that client would really enable that level of interoperability, just like Steam OS is this beautiful front end for the Steam store, and so many of those PC games that were never intended to be played on Linux fire up just fine. So many games that are not listed as Steam Deck compatible, but play great on the Steam Deck. It's not hard. It's not a brick wall. It's not a barrier, but it's irksome just enough that I don't spend a lot of time messing with my GOG library on my Steam Deck. But if I could just flat pack GOG Galaxy, fire it up, have it work better, get that performance going, have it doing all the stuff that my Steam account is already doing on that, that would be incredible. That would be really exciting to me. I know there's probably not. I feel like Epic is going to be the holdout. You know, the corporate clash, the ire, the gamesmanship and the conflict between Epic and Steam. Something tells me that Epic is going to work aggressively to not support anything that might go well on like a Steam product. That might work well on a Steam product. Right now, I feel for gamers, Steam Machine and Steam Deck are sort of the aggressive push. That's why we're seeing these numbers tick up in Linux gaming support. So that because the push for Linux gaming is coming from Steam, I feel like Epic isn't going to do much to really make that experience more fluid or better through the Epic Game Store. And I feel like Epic will end up being the holdout that kind of it eventually you want to support wherever your customers go. But I feel like GOG making this step is a very big admission that an indie publisher, or I should say an indie distributor, is looking at where audiences might be going, and there's a trend where it makes sense for them to support that kind of development. I feel like Epic will hold out until it's absolutely critical or necessary for them to also support Linux gaming, and I just feel like that's short-sighted. I feel like they could make a beautiful Trojan horse, right? You make the Epic Game Store, the Epic Game Launcher, all of the Epic stuff that is necessary to drive and update a game. You make a really great package that loads on a Steam Deck, and now you've got a competitive Trojan horse. You've got this wedge. Well, yeah, I mean, all these free games. Every week you get a free game with Epic. Don't you want to be able to play them on your Steam Deck too? And then people are interacting with your launcher, and maybe that generates additional sales, right? Like someone's already there. Oh, maybe they've got an exclusive, or maybe they've got something that I want to play. Maybe it's just a really great sale. You could buy this game in Steam, but if you bought it through Epic, it's like half price. You know, those kinds of things might move the needle, but you'd have to put in the development work to make an Epic game launcher work really well on Linux. And I'm sure Epic doesn't want to enrich the Steam Deck experience. The flip side of this, which I think is really funny, remember I've been complaining about companies like NVIDIA are trying to look at the entire consumer market like they're post-consumer, right? They don't care that you can't buy a GPU and you can't buy RAM and prices are skyrocketing. They're fine with that. They're going to make more money in the long term, and they're purposely doing things like making fewer GPUs so that they can put more manufacturing capacity into data center components. And then if they make fewer GPUs, the GPUs are going to be more expensive anyway, so they'll make more money. It's a win-win for them. So the argument has been, if you can't buy the components to make a really nice gaming PC, well, what you should do, you should instead just use cloud gaming. And that's the other big win for Linux. NVIDIA GeForce Now answers the lack of PC Game Pass support on Linux with a new native app. RTX 5080 cloud rendering runs ultra settings on Steam Deck or Ubuntu. Written up by Ben Wilson over at windowscentral.com. And the experience apparently is very nice. Ben goes down, breaks out his experiences using it, how he's really trying to test for latency and for that kind of performance. But yeah, if you can't afford to build a really nice gaming PC and you wanted to also run a Linux machine, now you don't have to worry. You could just do the cloud gaming. And NVIDIA is gonna support you there. You don't have to buy an NVIDIA GPU. You can just lease NVIDIA GPU performance in perpetuity and never own a nice gaming PC. You see, the system just works. It just works to make it better. And that's how we're gonna get through this, y'all, is by essentially leasing all of your compute performance forever. And that makes me really sad. Okay, I'm being kind of snarky. I am happy that Linux is getting that kind of attention. That actually is a good thing. Improving that performance, improving the handoff, the bandwidth, the latency, all of that is great. But it does drive me a little crazy that NVIDIA is so quick to manipulate their end of the market, and then in creating the problem, they can sell a solution that will be way worse for consumers in the long run. And that to me is really cynical. But at the same time, we can acknowledge that anything that improves the situation for gaming on Linux ultimately is a good thing for the Linux community, and they have an option here where they'd be able to take advantage of better performance and a better solution for cloud game streaming. So that's where we're at. From Ripso404. I don't like, sorry. I assume the future is what Elon Musk said. The computer is taken away from us. Our devices will just be screens with Wi-Fi chips. I don't like it, but with only a few companies viable in making silicon, they can control everything, and 70% of the population are sheep. Like the App Store you used to be able to buy apps, now they're all subscription-based. You're constantly tied down to debt, basically in every aspect of life. And again, I feel like the thing because you're not wrong. The thing that we can push back against, though, is this notion of inevitability. The fact that Elon Musk has said this should be a giant warning sign that this is not an inevitable conclusion. He is the master of overpromising and underdelivering. And there are all of these opportunities for us to point out and to just keep guiding the people in our circles of family and friends. It doesn't have to be the way that that jerk said it would be. And just look at how rich the communities have been for like recycling and repairing and refurbishing. I'm sitting on a couple little mini PCs that I'm trying to help build for family and friends. I'm going to be taking a couple of machines to my daughter's school. They're in need, right? These things are getting more expensive. School district isn't fulfilling some of their contracts and stuff like they used to be. Like, there are opportunities here to show, not just say, but to show it doesn't have to be the future that that one jerk just said was inevitable. He has never been right. Nothing he has ever said has come to pass in the way that he's promised it would. It's this constant pressure. We keep losing ground. I'll grant you that. And consumers keep voting with their wallets in the worst ways possible. And by the time consumers wake up, maybe it will be too late. But we don't have to help them. Look at the international communities that are looking at like how you refurbish electronics, how you keep waste out of or gadgets out of landfills. Just because something isn't useful to this individual doesn't mean it should be destroyed in a landfill and set on fire. Like, we're seeing the push away from how we traditionally do business with companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Apple. We're seeing the pockets of conversation across the EU as they're looking at alternatives, like maybe our government systems should be on Linux instead of Windows. Maybe our office and document solutions should be Libra instead of Microsoft. There are all these opportunities that are actually playing out. And again, if you pay attention to politics, well, politically, there is a reason why you might not want to be entrenched in United States corporate software if you're France or Germany. That might be a benefit to your political operations and your citizenry. Looking out for the needs of your citizens, maybe there's a benefit if Windows 10 is end of life and you can keep a mountain of computer hardware working and not upgrade. Because you can't upgrade to Windows 11, you decide to switch over to Linux. It's the thing that really irks me is in techies, in comments on YouTube, and I'm not picking on you, Ripso, I just mean in general, there's this air of impoopification is inevitable. And so then they just sort of do things that feed the inevitability of that impoopification. Instead of, it doesn't have to be, and you can make every change in your circles of family and friends, and you can be there to express how things are different. And it doesn't need to be like an entire tech lesson. You're going to lose everyone that you try and explain all the ins and outs and all of the different builds. And let me tell you about these different distros. And maybe you want to do this and maybe you want to do that. And then you install this and you run this and sudo apt-get and you do all this funky stuff. And then you have a computer that's harder to use. Or you show up. My daughter is playing with some kid from her school. And I'm listening to a parent talk about how horrifically expensive like Nintendo stuff has gotten. And I have my backpack and I pull my Steam Deck out of my backpack and I just put it in their hands. And I say, that's PC gaming now. And then I just shut up. Because the Steam Deck is going to do all the talking for me. And that's gaming on Linux. And, ooh, do you need to hack source your games on Wine with emulation on x86 for AMD APU Radeon FSRs? Or do they just go through the catalog of games that I have on Steam and play games on my Steam Deck? See, that's the answer to someone like Elon Musk. Oh no, it'll just be a screen with a Wi-Fi chip in there and you won't need to do anything and everything will just be, we'll own it all and you'll just lease in perpetuity. And then you pick up a Steam Deck. It's like a $400 computer. It's not cheap, but it's certainly not expensive. Plays games really well. What's so hard about gaming on Linux? I put SteamOS on a little mini PC. I could then give that mini PC to someone, have them plug it into their living room TV, hook up a controller, and boy howdy, is that a really good 1080p living room gaming experience. I don't have to sit there and explain stuff to them. Oh, it's SteamOS, but it's really Linux, and it's kind of like this, but if you have Debian, but then if you have Ubuntu, but then if you do this, and Mint Linux is different. Completely unnecessary. From Darcy, I love how Star Trek Discovery proclaimed Elon as a famous genius, but the guy who proclaimed that turned out to be a mirror universe monster. Spoilers! I love it. I mean, recent Star Trek has been very disappointing, but every now and then there's a gem. So I want to wrap this up. I'm talking way too long, and I can feel my voice is like physically constricting on me. I have been setting up communities on Dig. I have 2 communities on digg.com. The first one, the important one, is glowing rectangles. Dig.com/glowing rectangles, where you can help support content creators. The whole point of that community isn't to celebrate me, it's to try and give more attention to content that you feel deserves more attention. I just recently posted on dig.com/glowing rectangles that I am subscribed and I smashed the bell icon, and I know that my buddy TK Bay just put out a video on the Red Magic 11 Air. I'm very critical of that phone. I don't think it needs to exist, but he actually got to use it. So wouldn't you want to hear someone as knowledgeable as TK Bay sharing his experiences trying out the Red Magic 11 Air? I think that is in keeping with this collection of podcast listeners and viewers. Like, that to me sounds like content y'all would be interested in. So I never got a notification from YouTube that TK Bay had published a new video. I went to my subscription feed where I've told YouTube these are all the things I've subscribed to, and there is no entry for TK Bay, the person I used to host a podcast with. Google is completely separating me from one of my best friend's YouTube channels. When I've told YouTube that I have subscribed and I've smashed the bell icon, that I want notifications when my buddy puts that out. And the only reason I knew that TK Bay had posted a video was because it showed up in my RSS feed reader. Right. I have an RSS feed reader with all of my favorite YouTube channels in it, and that's how I really get notifications when new videos arrive. YouTube is actively working against us. So if you go to dig.com/glowing rectangles, upvote some content, share, some content, and also share some comments. But upvote things, dig them, improve the visibility, because these platforms are actively working against us, all of us. You as the viewer, us as the creator. They are working as hard as they can to make sure a narrow band of the most profitable popularity is the only thing you'll see. And there's a way around that. You can be apathetic and act like it's inevitable that this is going to completely crater and you're never going to have any new content that's really fun to watch. Or you can find the other communities of people that are trying to support each other. I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is. I think it's important that we do more than just watch, and that we view with intention and we share with intention. So I set up a community to help that. And then the flip side of that is I also have one of the most popular starter communities on Dig for smartphone photography for enthusiasts, and that's Shot on Android, dig.com/shot-on-android. That was unfortunate. I really wish I had just slammed all those letters together. But I do want to highlight, this is the photo of the week, comes from @Georgie, a gray heron peacefully posing for this click, shot from the Vivo X100S Pro. Actually, it took a while until the heron turned its head in the right direction. So this is the photo of the week. I'm going to give it a dig. I dig this photo. @Forrest says that's a beautiful shot. And this is a remarkable photo of a perfectly posed heron, framed nicely in the frame. Gorgeous depth of field falling off behind the heron. Eye is in critical focus. Nice, dark, shadowed, rich contrast, lush greens. This is just an all-around banger photo. So if you would like to submit and contribute photography to one of the more popular photography communities on Dig as we speak, dig.com/shot-on-android. And the only requirement, the only criteria is that the photo has to come from an Android device. Please list what device took the photo. And if you want to share a little, if you did maybe a light edit, or if you used a special mode on your phone, just list that in the description. We're about to break 100 subscribers on that community, which would be really cool. Again, new communities on Dig, once you kind of hit that triple digit, it's kind of building its own momentum. And again, none of these are me communities. I'm not trying to make a podcast companion community where it's all about what I do. I'm really trying to put anything out there that I can, which will organically build a real grassroots support collective. We want to support good content creators. We want to support good content. We want places where we can share, critique, or maybe ask. Maybe ask for, hey, I'm trying to do this thing with my phone camera. Does anyone have any tips or tricks on how I can do this? That's what a real community would have to offer. So check out dig.com. It's pretty fun. I feel like it helps us step away from the rampant fascism of a Twitter, the horrifically Oracle based manipulation of a TikTok, the sort of pandering and AI influence of a Reddit, all of these, and again, Dig might totally impoopify in another year too. It's highly likely that could happen, but while it's new and it's fresh and it's fun to use now, let's go ahead and use it now. And then if it does crater again, we'll go somewhere else. We'll take our ball and go home. That's what's killing me is right now, it's like literal media propagandizing on a social media platform, but someone's looking at that and going, oh, but I've got followers here and I don't want to have to get new followers. So I'll just stay. And you know what? I'm staying because I'm really trying to reach people on this site that's actively trying to spread fascist propaganda and weaponized misinformation. But I'm gonna be one of those that speaks the truth to that power. Sure. Or just go somewhere else. I don't know. It's great. So, and Simon Says Hypno says that was a great shot. So if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast for the replay crew, Simon Says Hypno has confirmed that Georgie's gray heron is a great photo. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. This was a very angsty and cranky podcast. I feel like last week's was so much more fun, and that actually was one of like the least viewed podcasts I've had in months. And I'll be curious to see, like, is my blood pressure higher the indicator of what makes for more viewership on YouTube? Like, is YouTube actively trying to cause me an aneurysm and only rewarding podcasts where I get legit, like, pissy and worked up? I think, like, Google might actively be trying to kill me. So on that note, have a great week. There's going to be the audio replay coming out. Again, I always greatly appreciate people supporting, sharing, leaving comments. If you use a podcast app of some kind, reviewing the podcast, you know, helping just to kind of bring more cool nerds to the table. And then it's just the huge plead, support community. If you want this stuff to get better, you're losing content creators every week, and you don't always know how many people have stopped making content, which means you get less stuff to watch. If you care about this stuff, the only thing you can do is be active with your intention to support the community you care about. If it's a part of my online endeavors like Dig or Mastodon, cool. But if you're finding your own ways of spreading the word on this stuff, if you're on Threads and you've got a group of people there and you're really sharing content on Threads and it's getting great traction, awesome. But the intention and the effort matters more than anything else right now. And that's huge for all of us trying to join these conversations and discussions. Folks, I'm going to catch you back next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SDGQA podcast channel. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of that mental health so you can keep being the amazing tech neighbor I know you can be. I'll catch you back next week. I love you all. Be safe. Keep your heads down. Stay warm if you're in cold places and stay cool if you're in hot places. And I'll catch you back.